BRIGHTROCK believes that with every change in life comes opportunity. The World Economic Forum puts change, its challenges, and its opportunities on a global stage. This World Economic Forum special edition BizNews podcast is illuminated by BRIGHTROCK, the first ever needs-match life insurance that changes as your life changes.
Mr. Vradenburg, let's begin with the DAC, the Davos Alzheimer's Collaborative. Main mission, main goal, how long has it been around, and how far are we on that goal to battle the disease of Alzheimer's?
The Davos Alzheimer's Collaborative is only a year old. It's a new global initiative, much in the line of all of the initiatives at a global level that we've been doing for infectious diseases, but this one's aimed at responding to the global challenge of Alzheimer's.
Give us an idea of some of the statistics. I've read 150 million, and then by the middle of the century, we're looking at 500 million. Just confirm some of those figures for me, please.
Well, it's 50 million families today, which with multiple people in a family is probably 500 million people. All right, and by mid-century, there'll be 150 million families affected by this disease, and probably close to 1 billion people affected by this disease.
Beyond the emotional toll, there is an economic toll. Have you been able to quantify that at all? Besides, you have the person who is laboring under the disease. There is a caregiver. There's somebody who's not going to work, that is not being a productive member of society. Have you been able to quantify that?
Economists have quantified this at $1 trillion a year, doubling every 10 years. So over the next decade, there'll be $15 trillion in global costs of this disease. And you're absolutely right. A large portion of this is the caregiver costs, loss of job, loss of career, out-of-pocket costs on the part of families around the world. So it's a huge cost to governments and their health systems. It's also a huge cost to families.
The entire world is focused on the COVID-19 pandemic for at least the last 2 and something years. There was a lot of collaboration between the public and the private sector. Alzheimer's and dementia has been referred to, I've seen in some articles, as the silent pandemic. Is there a lesson to be learned for how the world, at least, is continuing to combat COVID-19?
I would say there are 2 main lessons that have come out of COVID. Collaboration. So this effort is involving governments, industry, academic researchers, people living with the disease, and others in a massive collaborative effort. No one company can solve this. No one government can solve this. No one academic researcher can solve this. So it's going to be a team sport to beat this sucker. The other thing we've learned is that you can't think of the low and middle income countries as an afterthought. So we're building in the collaboration in those countries from the get-go so that in fact they are part of both the academic research, the discovery research, the clinical trials research, and the health systems that have to be prepared to begin to detect this disease early in its course so we can interfere with the course of this disease and stop it before symptoms occur.
You are still tuned in to the World Economic Forum special edition BizNews podcast, illuminated by BRIGHTROCK, the first ever needs-match life insurance that changes as your life changes.
Clinical research, you are taking it to East Africa. That, of course, is of interest to people in South Africa who will be listening to this.
Well, Africa is a major continent of great genetic diversity. And so we have a lot to learn from how this disease works in African populations. And yes, we've been just announced a partnership with the Aga Khan University in Kenya. And in fact, we're going to be starting a clinical trial there in the coming year, basically to test how we can use clinical trials, not just in Europe and the United States, which is where they primarily are done today, but how can we do clinical trials in unusual populations that have not had clinical trial experience? So Africa, India, and other low-income countries.
2 last questions. Are decision makers in the world governments, are they taking out their checkbooks for this? Do you need greater commitment?
We need greater commitment from governments around the world and from major foundations. We have gotten initial funding from industry and from foundations, but large commitments have not been made, and in part because of COVID. In fact, government health budgets, in fact, are stretched beyond limit by COVID. It's an understandable and quite justifiable decision. But in fact, that means this hidden epidemic may stay hidden for a little while. But we've got to get in front of it. Like we're planning for public planning for future pandemics. This is a pandemic we know is coming to a certainty because of the aging populations of the world. And so we're preparing the infrastructure for when the global governments can turn their attention to this one.
Lastly, brain health, sustainability of the brain. Sustainability is a big theme in the world, even at Davos now. How do you create a sustainable brain?
Well, it turns out that recent discoveries have led us to believe that you could prevent or delay 40% of Alzheimer's cases with a different lifestyle and greater attention to the risk factors, hypertension and diabetes, associated with this disease. So as we go around to the health systems of the world and we introduce them to this problem, we're going to prepare them not only for detecting and diagnosing the disease so they can use future therapeutic products, but introduce these other lifestyle public health interventions that they can employ today before therapeutics get here.
Pleasure to chat to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for tuning in to this World Economic Forum special edition BizNews podcast illuminated by BRIGHTROCK, the first ever needs-match life insurance that changes as your life changes.